The Grand Galactic Council chamber sparkled under the light of 3 artificial suns, its crystalline dome refracting rainbow patterns across the assembled delegates. Species from 1,000 worlds sat in curved tiers, their forms as diverse as the stars themselves. In the center of this cosmic gathering, a young Centaurian diplomat named Tizara stood at the speaking podium, her iridescent scales shimmering with nervous energy. Distinguished representatives, Tizara's translator hummed. While reviewing the military cooperation treaties, I discovered an unusual clause. Why are humans the only species marked as excluded from all combat exercises? Special classification S9. The chamber's comfortable murmur died instantly. Several elder diplomats shifted uncomfortably in their environmental pods. A Proximan representative's crystalline form clouded with anxiety patterns, while the Regellian elder's photoreceptors dimmed noticeably. Admiral Chen Wei, Earth's senior representative, sat calmly in her dark blue uniform adorned with gold trim. She lifted an antique porcelain teacup to her lips, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The humans in attendance shared knowing looks, some suppressing grins, others shaking their heads slightly. First speaker call. A towering figure of shifting plasma, contained within an ornate environmental suit, rose from the High Council's bench. Young Tizara, some matters of galactic security are classified for good reason. Perhaps we should move to the next item on our agenda. With respect, first speaker, Tizara's spinal crest fluttered with determination. As junior representative of the diplomatic corps, I am tasked with understanding all aspects of our treaties. The human exclusion seems to contradict our principles of equal participation. A low rumble of concerned whispers filled the chamber. Several species known for their warrior traditions began emitting threat response pheromones, causing environmental filters to work overtime. Admiral Chen set down her teacup with a soft clink that somehow carried across the vast chamber. First speaker, if I may. Her voice was gentle but carried an undertone of amusement. Perhaps it's time the younger generation learned why the exclusion exists. It might prevent misunderstandings. Kittle's plasma form swirled with patterns that translated to deep consideration. Admiral Chen, the events of the First Contact War Games are still considered sensitive. And yet, Chen replied, standing smoothly, they led to the most stable peace agreement in galactic history. Sometimes understanding why a rule exists is more important than the rule itself. The chamber erupted in a cascade of translated arguments. Some representatives insisted on maintaining security protocols, while others supported transparency. Tizara stood at her podium, her scales shifting through patterns of confusion and fascination. First speaker Catal raised all 4 of his energy appendages, calling for silence. Admiral Chen, you were there. If you believe sharing this history serves the greater good, you have the Council's permission. Chen walked to the central platform, her footsteps echoing in the now silent chamber. She touched a control panel, and a holographic display sprang to life, showing Earth's first contact vessel, the Steel Dream. 15 years ago, Chen began, her voice carrying easily through the vast space. Humanity received its first and last invitation to participate in the grand military exhibition. We were so proud, so eager to prove ourselves worthy of our place among the stars. She paused, looking around the chamber. We didn't understand then why the elder species exchanged such worried looks, or why the warrior cultures grew so quiet when we accepted. The hologram shifted to show the Steel Dream approaching a massive space station, its aged hull contrasting sharply with the sleek alien vessels surrounding it. We were like children, bringing stone tools to a gathering of master artisans. At least, that's what everyone thought. Chen's smile widened slightly. Nobody expected what happened next. Nobody could have predicted how 17 humans aboard an outdated ship would change the galaxy's understanding of warfare forever. Tizara's scales rippled with anticipation. What did happen, Admiral? Chen looked up at first speaker Catal, who nodded slowly. Well, young one, it began with a simple training exercise. something that every spacefaring race had done thousands of times before. But humans, you see, we have a rather different perspective on the word impossible. The chamber leaned forward collectively, even the most ancient species suddenly keen to hear the story from a human's perspective. The tale of how humanity earned its unique classification was about to unfold. Captain Sarah Martinez stood on the bridge of the Steel Dream, watching her crew prepare for their first interstellar military exhibition. The aging vessel's systems hummed with a familiar resonance that had become more comforting than concerning over the years. Through the main viewport, the massive Galactic exhibition station loomed, its crystalline structures reflecting starlight in dazzling patterns. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Park called from his station, "we're receiving docking protocols. They're different from what we expected." His fingers danced over the holographic interface, adjusting parameters. Martinez smiled, smoothing her dark blue uniform. "Different how, Lieutenant?" "They've assigned us to the heritage sector, Captain." Park's expression remained professional, but his eyes betrayed his confusion. "It's apparently where they dock historical vessels and museum pieces." A quiet chuckle rippled through the bridge crew. The Steel Dream might not have been the newest ship in Earth's fleet, but she was far from a museum piece. Her worn hull and visible repair patches told stories of countless missions and successful returns. "Acknowledged," Martinez replied, her voice carrying a hint of amusement. "Let's show them what this museum piece can do. Execute docking procedures." Through the station's massive entry port, Martinez could see vessels from other species, sleek, organic-looking ships that seemed to grow rather than be built, crystalline constructs that bent light around them, and energy vessels that appeared to be made of captured starlight. The Steel Dream's docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk that made several alien observers visibly wince. A delegation of various species waited in the reception area, their environmental suits gleaming under the station's artificial light. "Welcome to the Grand Military Exhibition." A tall insectoid being stepped forward, its translator producing perfect standard Galactic. "I am Chief Observer Relith. We have arranged accommodation for your unique environmental needs." Martinez nodded graciously. "Thank you, Chief Observer. My crew and I look forward to participating in the exercises." "Yes, about that." Ryleth's antennae twitched in what the human crew's cultural database suggested was diplomatic discomfort. "We've made some modifications to the standard trials. Given your species, technological level." Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez, standing beside Martinez, tensed slightly. The captain placed a subtle, calming hand on her tactical officer's arm. "How thoughtful," Martinez replied smoothly. "Though I assure you, we're capable of participating in the standard trials." The assembled alien delegates exchanged glances, a crystalline being shifted, creating prismatic patterns that the humans' translators interpreted as barely contained amusement. "Captain Martinez," a new voice joined the conversation. A being composed of swirling plasma stepped forward in an environmental suit that seemed to be made of pure mathematics. "I am Grand Marshal Vector. Perhaps we should discuss the exhibition parameters over refreshments." The human crew followed their hosts through corridors that seemed to defy Euclidean geometry. They arrived at an observation lounge overlooking the practice zones, massive areas of space filled with obstacles, target drones, and what appeared to be artificial terrain. "As you can see," Vector gestured with an appendage of coherent energy, "our exercises test the pinnacle of military technology and tactical doctrine. We wouldn't want your first interstellar exhibition to be overwhelming." Martinez sipped the provided drink, some kind of synthesized beverage adjusted for human consumption. "Grand Marshal, humanity has a saying. The best ship in the fleet isn't the newest or the most advanced. It's the one that comes home." The alien delegates stared at her, their various sensory organs struggling to process this concept. "We appreciate your concern," Martinez continued, setting down her glass. "But we didn't come here to be coddled. We came to learn, to share, and to prove ourselves worthy of our place among the stars." Vector's plasma form swirled with patterns that suggested both amusement and curiosity. Very well, Captain. Standard trials it shall be. Though I must warn you, no species has ever completed all 12 exercises on their first attempt. Martinez stood, straightening her uniform. Then we'll be honored to be the first to try. She paused, allowing herself a small smile. After all, another human saying goes, impossible just means no one's done it yet. As the human crew left the lounge, the alien delegates huddled together, their translators working overtime to process the implications of what they'd just witnessed. None of them noticed the slight spring in Martinez's step, or the confident glances her crew exchanged. The exhibition was about to become very interesting indeed. The Proximate observation deck buzzed with anticipation as Captain Martinez and her team prepared for the first exhibition trial. Below, the massive simulation chamber stretched for kilometers, filled with artificial terrain that could be reconfigured at will. Delegates from 30 species washed through various sensory interfaces, their attention focused on the small group of humans entering the arena. Exercise parameters. Urban combat scenario. The station's AI announced. Objective. Secure the central command post. Opposition. Standard Level 3 defensive systems. Lieutenant Park adjusted his basic combat suit, a stark contrast to the advanced battle shells worn by other species. They really did give us the beginner course, Captain. Perfect. Martinez smiled, checking her rifle's magnetic acceleration chamber. That means they won't see it coming. The simulation began with a soft chime. Holographic buildings materialized around them, creating a mock city with gleaming spires and interconnected skyways. Defense drones hummed to life, their energy shields casting a soft blue glow across the artificial landscape. Above, Grand Marshal Vector's plasma form rippled with anticipation. Now, Tizara, observe how a technologically developing species handles basic combat protocols. The human team split up immediately, a move that caused murmurs among the observers. Standard doctrine called for maintaining unit cohesion. Instead, the humans vanished into the urban maze, seemingly abandoning any semblance of traditional strategy. Most irregular, a crystalline being noted, its facets reflecting confusion patterns. They're sacrificing their strongest advantage, group defensive capabilities. Suddenly, the simulation's environmental controls began reporting anomalies. Temperature variations, atmospheric disturbances, and electromagnetic fluctuations appeared throughout the arena. The defense drone's sensors struggled to compensate. What are they doing? Cesara's scales shifted with curiosity. Their suits don't have environmental manipulation capabilities. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez's voice crackled over the command channel. Steam pipes breached in Sector 4, Captain, creating quite the fog bank. Excellent, Martinez replied. Park, how's our little gift for the power grid? Ready to overload on your mark. They never said we couldn't use the city's own systems against them. The observers watched in growing bewilderment as the humans systematically transformed the battlefield. They weren't fighting the drones. They were changing the very nature of the combat zone. This is unprecedented. Vector's containment suit registered increasing agitation. They're treating the environment itself as a weapon system. The defense drones, programmed for standard combat protocols, found their sensors confused by steam, their targeting systems disrupted by power surges, and their mobility hampered by strategically collapsed debris. The humans struck from multiple angles, using the chaos they'd created to their advantage. Central command post secured, the AI announced just 15 minutes into the exercise. New record established for Level 3 scenario. The observation deck erupted in shocked discussions. The humans had completed a 30-minute exercise in half the expected time, using methods that no species had considered valid combat tactics. But they barely fired their weapons, Tizara stammered. How did they? They changed the rules. Vector's plasma form swirled with complex patterns of realization. Instead of fighting within the parameters, they altered the parameters themselves. Martinez's team regrouped at the command post, their basic combat suits slightly steamed but otherwise untouched. Through their visors, observers could see them grinning. "Captain Martinez," Vector's voice carried across the communication channel. "Your methods are unorthodox." "Thank you, Grand Marshal," Martins replied politely. "On Earth, we have a concept called working with what you have. When you can't overpower an opponent, you change the battlefield until power becomes irrelevant." The gathered delegates processed this statement in stunned silence. The concept challenged thousands of years of established military doctrine. "Very well," Vector finally responded. "Prepare for Level 4. As the simulation reset, Tizera turned to the Grand Marshal. "Sir, shouldn't we advance them to a higher level? They clearly exceeded Level 3 parameters." "No, young one." Vector's plasma form had condensed, a sign of intense concentration. "I suspect we're about to see something even more remarkable. They're not just completing these exercises, they're redefining them." Below, the human team spread out once again, their seemingly primitive equipment and basic suits belying the revolutionary tactics they were about to unleash on an unsuspecting galaxy. The first display had ended. The real demonstrations were about to begin. The observation deck of Testing Zone Beta fell silent as the scenario parameters appeared on the main display. Captain Martins and her team stood in an isolated section of the station, their environmental suits detecting the artificial atmosphere being drained away. "Survival challenge initiated," the AI announced. "All participants will be transported to Kepler 186F testing ground. Survival duration: 72 hours. Equipment restricted to basic survival gear. Emergency extraction available upon request." Grand Marshal Vector's plasma form pulsed with anticipation. Now we shall see how they handle true adversity. No human has ever experienced this level of environmental stress. The transport beam engaged, and the human team materialized on the harsh surface of Kepler 186F. Wind-swept plains of rust-colored rocks stretched to the horizon, while two dim suns cast overlapping shadows across the barren landscape. The temperature gauge read -40 degrees. "Standard gear inventory," Lieutenant Park reported, checking their supplies. 1 thermal blanket each, basic rations, water purifier, and a multi-tool. No power cells, no advanced tech. Martinez surveyed the landscape, her visor's basic heads-up display marking potential shelter locations. Perfect. Time to show them why humans love camping. The observation deck erupted in confused translations of the word camping. Within hours, the human team had transformed their situation. They used the multi-tool to strip parts from their environmental suit's outer layers, creating basic solar collectors from the reflective material. The thermal blankets became walls for a shelter, angled to reflect heat inward while protecting against the bitter wind. "Fascinating," Tizara whispered, her scales shifting to analysis patterns. "They're deliberately damaging their protective equipment to create new tools." Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez had discovered that certain local rocks contained trace minerals. Using the multi-tool's basic power source and some creative wiring from their suits, the team constructed a rudimentary heating element. "They're not just surviving," Vector observed, his containment suit registering increasing agitation. "They're establishing a sustainable presence with minimal resources." By the end of the first day, the humans had created what they called a base camp. They had water collection systems made from suit components, thermal regulators from local minerals, and even a basic perimeter alert system using nothing but mechanical triggers and local materials. "Sir," a junior observer reported, "they're using their rations as bait." Indeed, Martinez had ordered the team to use small portions of their emergency food to attract local insectoid creatures. By studying which ones survived eating the Earth-based nutrients, they identified potential food sources. "This is unprecedented," Vector announced to the gathered officials. "No species has ever attempted to establish a permanent survival solution during this trial. The exercise is meant to test endurance, not..." He paused, searching for the right word. Innovation. Tizara supplied, her translator struggling to convey the concept. On the surface, the human team had begun exploring their surroundings in rotating shifts. They mapped water sources, identified useful mineral deposits, and even started experimenting with primitive tools made from local materials. Captain Martinez, Vector finally called over the communication channel. The purpose of this exercise is to endure until rescue. Martinez looked up from where she was teaching Park how to fashion a basic spear from their suit's support struts. With respect, Grand Marshal, humans don't believe in waiting for rescue. We believe in turning survival situations into sustainable ones. The observation deck fell silent as the implications sank in. These humans weren't just trying to survive the trial. They were preparing to live there indefinitely if necessary. Should we terminate the exercise? Tizara asked quietly. Vector's plasma form swirled with complex patterns of consideration. No, let them continue. I believe we're witnessing something important here. A species that doesn't understand the concept of impossible situations. As the second sun set, casting deep purple shadows across the landscape, the human team gathered in their makeshift shelter. They shared purified water, discussed improvements to their camp's design, and even laughed about their situation. I don't understand, Tizara admitted. Why do they seem to be enjoying this? Because, young one, Vector replied, his voice carrying a new note of respect. We may have just discovered why humans advanced so quickly on their homeworld. They don't just adapt to survive. They thrive on the challenge itself. The holographic war room of Testing Zone Gamma hummed with energy as the third trial began. Captain Martins and her team faced a new challenge. Tactical combat against simulated enemy forces in a complex, multi-layered battlefield. The observation deck was packed with representatives from advanced military species, eager to see how the humans would handle pure strategy. Tactical simulation initiated, the AI announced. Objective: neutralize enemy command structure while preserving civilian infrastructure. Opposition: elite-level tactical units. The human team gathered around a three-dimensional map of the battlefield. Unlike previous participants, they didn't immediately begin plotting attack vectors or calculating force ratios. What are they doing? Tizara asked, her scales rippling with confusion. They're just talking. Lieutenant Park pointed to various locations on the map, while Rodriguez made notes on a primitive paper notebook, a sight that caused several alien observers to emit amused pheromones. Psychological warfare package ready, Captain, Rodriguez reported, her fingers dancing over a basic tactical interface. Standard confusion protocol, with a few human touches. Martinez nodded, a slight smile playing at her lips. Let's show them why Sun Tzu is still required reading after 3,000 years. The simulation began. The human team's first move puzzled every observer. They deliberately revealed their positions to the enemy forces, then executed what appeared to be a chaotic retreat. Most irregular, Vector commented, his plasma form swirling with analysis patterns. They're sacrificing tactical advantage for no apparent gain. But as the enemy forces moved to engage, strange things began happening. False sensor readings appeared across the battlefield. Dunny heat signatures popped up in random locations. Communication channels filled with contradictory information. They're not fighting the enemy, Tizara realized, her scales shifting to excitement patterns. They're fighting their perception of reality. The human team had separated into smaller units, each one appearing to act independently and often irrationally. Enemy forces found themselves chasing phantoms, responding to threats that didn't exist, and gradually losing cohesion as their tactical doctrine failed to account for the humans' apparently random behavior. Observer Vector, a crystalline being, spoke up, its facets showing distress patterns. The humans are using deception as a primary weapon. This violates standard combat protocols. No, Vector replied, his containment suit registering intense interest. They're demonstrating something we've never seen before. the weaponization of uncertainty itself. On the battlefield, Martinez's team had the enemy forces completely disoriented. What appeared to be chaos was actually an intricately choreographed dance of deception. Each retreat led to an ambush, each apparent mistake was a trap, and every sign of weakness masked a position of strength. Enemy command structure neutralized. The AI announced, "Civilian infrastructure preservation, 100%. Mission accomplished." The observation deck erupted in heated discussions. The humans had achieved their objective without ever engaging in direct combat with the main enemy force. Captain Martinez, Vector called over the command channel. "Your tactics are disturbing. You turned the enemy's own training against them." Martinez stood in the center of the holographic battlefield, surrounded by the aftermath of their psychological victory. In human military history, Grand Marshal, we learned that the most effective way to win a battle is to make the enemy defeat themselves. Tizera's translator struggled to process the concept. "But how did you know it would work?" "Because," Rodriguez explained, still making notes in her paper notebook, "every species with rigid tactical doctrine has the same weakness. They expect their enemies to fight by the same rules they do." Vector's plasma form condensed thoughtfully. "And humans don't have these rules." "We have rules," Martins replied, her voice carrying a note of steel beneath its professional courtesy. "But our first rule is that rules change when survival is at stake." The gathered observers watched as the human team began preparing for their next trial, their primitive notebooks and basic equipment belying the sophisticated psychological warfare they had just demonstrated. "I think I understand now," Tizara whispered to Vector. "We've been measuring them by their technology level, when we should have been watching their minds." "Indeed," Vector agreed, his containment suit registering a new emotion, concern. "And I'm beginning to wonder what other surprises these humans have in store for us." The fourth trial would begin soon, and nobody in the observation deck doubted it would bring yet more revelations about humanity's hidden talents. The central command center of the exhibition station buzzed with nervous energy as the largest trial yet prepared to launch. 300 ships of various sizes filled the tactical display, automated vessels programmed with the most advanced combat protocols in the galaxy. Against this impressive array stood the Steel Dream and 2 support vessels, their aged hulls looking particularly obsolete in comparison. Space combat trial initiated, the AI announced. Objective: defend the designated sector against superior forces. Victory conditions: survival or enemy fleet neutralization. Captain Martinez stood on her bridge, watching the enemy fleet's formation through the main viewport. Lieutenant Park manned the navigation console while Rodriguez coordinated between the 3 human vessels. "Ma'am," Park reported, "they've positioned themselves in a standard Pincer 7 formation, exactly like the textbook example." "How considerate of them," Martinez smiled. "Let's show them why humans don't believe in textbook solutions. Execute Plan Thunderstorm." In the observation center, Grand Marshal Vector and the assembled delegates watched as the human vessels made what appeared to be a serious tactical error. They headed straight for a nearby asteroid field. "Curious," Tizera observed, her scales shifting to analysis patterns. "They're voluntarily restricting their maneuverability." The automated fleet split into textbook perfect pursuit formations, their superior engines quickly closing the distance. Just as they reached the edge of the asteroid field, the human ships did something unprecedented. "They're firing on the asteroids," a crystalline observer noted with confusion. "Not the enemy vessels." Martinez's voice carried across the command channel, calm and focused. "Execute micro-jump sequence. Pattern: Thunderdance." The 3 human vessels began performing a series of synchronized, short-range, faster-than-light jumps, each one lasting less than a second. With each jump, they appeared in a new position among the asteroids, their weapons creating a cascade of debris and radiation that played havoc with enemy sensors. "Impossible." Vector's plasma form swirled with agitation. The precision required for such maneuvers. Standard doctrine states that faster-than-light jumps are strategic tools, not tactical ones, Tuzara recited, her scales now showing excitement patterns. The humans are rewriting combat physics. The automated fleet's perfect formation began to break down. Their programming couldn't account for the chaos the humans had created. Debris from shattered asteroids created ever-changing blind spots in their sensor coverage, while radiation bursts from precisely targeted shots disrupted their communication networks. They're not fighting the ships, Vector realized, his containment suit registering profound understanding. They're fighting space itself. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the command channel. Gravitational wake increasing, Captain. Ready for the lightning strike. The three human vessels synchronized their jumps one final time, appearing in formation above the now scattered enemy fleet. The debris field they'd created had forced the automated ships into a predictable pattern, exactly where Martins wanted them. Now, Martins ordered, show them why humans understand chaos better than anyone. The human ships executed a maneuver that made every observer's sensor systems scream in protest. They rode the gravitational waves created by their earlier destruction of the asteroid field, using the chaotic forces to amplify their weapons' effectiveness far beyond their normal capabilities. Fleet neutralize, the AI announced after a brief but intense exchange of fire. Exercise complete. New tactical protocols logged for analysis. The observation center remained silent for a long moment. The human ships had taken an overwhelming disadvantage and turned it into victory by changing the very nature of space combat. Captain Martinez, Vector finally spoke, his voice carrying a new note of respect tinged with concern. Your tactics violated 17 different established combat protocols. Yes, Grand Marshal, Martins replied, her image appearing on the main display. On Earth, we have a saying. The only rules in space are the laws of physics, and even those can be bent. Tizera turned to Vector, her translator struggling to convey her next question. Sir, if they can do this with obsolete ships and basic weapons. Indeed, Vector's plasma form condensed thoughtfully. Imagine what they could do with access to advanced technology. The human vessels moved into formation for their return to the station, their battle-scarred hulls bearing witness to their unconventional victory. In the observation center, the gathered delegates began urgent discussions about the implications of what they'd just witnessed. No one noticed Martinez's quiet smile as she prepared her crew for their next demonstration. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had survived on their deadly homeworld for so long. The Grand Council chamber of the exhibition station had never been so crowded. Representatives from every major spacefaring civilization packed the tiered seats, their environmental suits and containment fields creating a shimmer of technologies from across the galaxy. At the center of attention stood Captain Martinez and her crew, their simple uniforms stark against the advanced beings surrounding them. This emergency session will now commence, First Speaker Ktal announced, his energy form pulsing with formal patterns. We are here to discuss the implications of human military participation in galactic affairs. Grand Marshal Vector's plasma form moved to the speaking position, his containment suit radiating with carefully controlled energy. In 5 days, we have witnessed the humans complete 37 different combat trials. They have broken every record, violated countless protocols, and demonstrated approaches to warfare that our civilizations never conceived possible. The chamber's holographic displays showed highlights from the human team's performances. Their transformation of environments, psychological warfare techniques, and chaos-based space combat played out in swift succession. Most disturbing, a crystalline elder added, its facets displaying concern patterns, is their ability to turn seemingly primitive technology into devastating weapons through sheer creativity. Tizara, watching from her junior delegate position, noticed something fascinating. The humans didn't appear concerned by the proceedings. If anything, they seemed quietly amused. Captain Martinez, Ktal addressed the human officer directly. Your species has demonstrated capabilities that concern us deeply. You turn limitations into advantages, chaos into strategy, and defeat into opportunity. How do you explain this? Martinez stepped forward, her posture relaxed but professional. First speaker, humans evolved on what you call a death world. Every day of our history was a survival exercise. We learned early that rigid rules and protocols are luxuries we couldn't afford. The chamber erupted in multilingual discussions. The concept of treating military doctrine as a luxury challenged thousands of years of galactic military philosophy. Consider, Martinez continued, that on Earth, even our plant life developed multiple strategies for survival. Is it any wonder we approach combat the same way? Vector moved closer, his containment suit's sensors focused intently on the human team. You understand, Captain, that your methods could destabilize millennia of established military doctrine. With respect, Grand Marshal, Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke up. Doctrine that cannot adapt is doctrine that will fail. The universe doesn't care about our protocols. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans weren't just demonstrating new tactics. They were challenging the very foundation of galactic military thinking. Kittle's energy form pulsed with decision patterns. We have reviewed the data extensively. The human approach to warfare is too unpredictable, too adaptable, and too innovative to be safely integrated into galactic military operations. Martinez nodded, unsurprised. You're not banning us because we're dangerous, are you? You're banning us because we prove that your entire approach to warfare is fundamentally flawed. The statement hung in the air like a charged particle. No species had ever dared to so directly challenge the established order. Motion to classify humanity as Category S9, Vector announced formally. All in favor. The vote was unanimous. Every species, from the oldest elder to the youngest delegate, raised their appendages or flashed their agreement patterns. Very well, Kittle concluded. From this moment forward, humanity is excluded from all galactic military operations. This classification is to be reviewed only in the event of a crisis that threatens the galaxy itself. As the chamber began to empty, Tizera approached Martinez. Captain, aren't you disappointed by this decision? Martinez smiled, a gesture that her crew mirrored. Not at all. We proved something important here, that innovation and adaptability trump technology and tradition every time. That's a lesson worth any classification. Vector, overhearing the exchange, moved closer. You planned for this outcome, didn't you? Grand Marshal, Martinez replied, her smile widening slightly. Sometimes the best victory is ensuring that your potential opponents understand exactly why they shouldn't fight you. The human team departed the chamber, leaving behind a galaxy of species reconsidering everything they thought they knew about warfare. In their wake, they left one final lesson. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the ability to win conflicts, but the wisdom to make them unnecessary. The decision was made. The humans were banned from warfare, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again. The Galactic Summit Chamber fell silent as Admiral Chen Wei finished recounting the story. Young Tizera's scales had shifted through a rainbow of emotional patterns during the telling, finally settling on a deep blue of comprehension. So, Tizera ventured, the ban wasn't really about containing human military potential. Not entirely. Chen smiled, lifting her teacup in a gesture that reminded the older delegates of Captain Martinez's calm demeanor years ago. It was about preventing something far more significant. First Speaker Katal's energy form rippled with agreement patterns. The true danger wasn't what humans could do in combat. It was what they could teach others about warfare. The holographic displays showed footage from those historic trials. The innovative tactics, the psychological warfare, the chaos-based combat maneuvers. But now, with 15 years of perspective, the younger delegates saw something their predecessors had missed. Every solution they created, Tizera observed, her scales brightening with revelation, could be replicated with any level of technology. Precisely, Chen nodded. Humanity's greatest weapon was never our tools or tactics. It was our perspective, our fundamental understanding that adaptation trumps tradition, that creativity overcomes superiority, and that every limitation is simply an invitation to innovate. The chamber's atmospheric processors hummed as they adjusted to the increased emotional outputs from various species. The implications were simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. The Military Exclusion Act, Vector's successor, explained. His plasma form, showing complex educational patterns, wasn't just about keeping humans out of conflicts. It was about preventing the militarization of human thinking across the galaxy. Chen stood, straightening her admiral's uniform. Consider what would happen if every species began approaching warfare like humans do. If every military force stopped relying on technological superiority and started focusing on creative solutions. The galaxy would never know peace, Kittel concluded. Every conflict would spiral into an endless cycle of innovation and counter-innovation. Tizera's scales shifted to a thoughtful purple, but surely sharing knowledge is better than hiding it. Young one. Chen's voice carried the weight of wisdom. Some knowledge is like a quantum particle. The very act of observing it changes its nature. Human military thinking isn't just a set of tactics. It's a fundamental shift in perspective that, once seen, cannot be unseen. The chamber's displays showed the Steel Dream's final departure from the exhibition station 15 years ago. The aged vessel had carried away not just a crew of innovative warriors, but a secret that the galaxy had decided to keep. And so, Chen concluded, lifting her teacup in a subtle salute to the memory, humanity accepted its role. We became the galaxy's reminder that there's always another way, always another solution, always another perspective. But we keep the most dangerous knowledge to ourselves, not because we're afraid to share it, but because we understand the responsibility of having it. Tizera stood, her scales now showing the formal patterns of diplomatic understanding. Thank you, Admiral Chen. I finally understand why the classification exists, not to protect the galaxy from human warfare, but to protect it from becoming too human in its approach to warfare. The chamber lights dimmed slightly as the artificial suns began their scheduled cycle. Chen's teacup was empty, but her smile remained. Remember this, young one, she said softly. The greatest victory humans ever achieved wasn't in proving how dangerous we could be. It was in proving why we shouldn't have to be dangerous at all. The assembled delegates began to disperse, each carrying a deeper understanding of why certain rules existed in the galaxy. As they left, many glanced back at the humans present, seeing them in a new light, not as excluded primitives, but as guardians of a perspective too powerful to share. Tizera remained behind, watching Admiral Chen prepare to leave. One last question, if I may. What would happen if the galaxy ever truly needed human military innovation? Chen paused at the chamber's entrance, her expression both serious and serene. Then, young one, the galaxy would learn why Earth's history calls it the art of war, and not the science of war. Let's hope that day never comes. The chamber fell silent as the last delegates departed, leaving only the soft hum of environmental systems and the weight of a decision that had shaped 15 years of galactic peace. The humans had been banned from warfare not because they were dangerous, but because they had mastered something far more powerful than any weapon, the art of making victory unnecessary.